Hello and welcome back. This is Veronica Tash. As always, I implore you, think critically, think about what I'm saying, think about the ideas you already have. Don't take either with a grain of salt. It's important that we're thinking this all through. But we want to start off where Donald Trump appears to have beaten Kamala Harris, or at least that's the most likely result based on what we have. Technically, no votes have been cast for president yet. Um, you don't vote for president. Very few of us ever do vote for president. Chances are no one watching the stream will ever vote for president in their life. Or at least under the current system we have, you'll never vote for president. Because only a handful of people actually vote for president. They're called electors. That's who you voted for on Tuesday. Slates of electors. So technically, 0 votes have been cast for Donald Trump. It is still technically possible, though extremely unlikely, that Harris or anyone else could win. Technically, Jill Stein could win and be the next president of the United States. The chances that these electors are going to all change what they said they were going to do in such numbers that happens is extremely unlikely. It's not something that you should expect in the least. But technically, that's where we are. And that's because we have a very undemocratic electoral system overall. But let's talk about the votes for electors, and we're going to pretend that these are votes for candidates, even though they're not. In 2020, there were 240.6 million eligible voters. In 2024, 245.7 million. That's an increase of just over 5 million votes, or potential votes, people who could vote. The actual votes in 2020, 158.5 million. As of when I pulled this up yesterday afternoon off of Wikipedia, this is the numbers that were in. Not everything has been counted yet. California only has like 60 some percent in as of right now. Some of them may have been counted. I heard it was 58% before that. So 2020, 158.5, like I said. 2024, 142.5. That is just shy of 150, let me get 15 point, just shy of 16 million less. It'll be a little bit under 16 million when everything is done. Might have another, 3-4 million votes to go in California from when I got this. But it's still a large drop. A lot fewer people voted. They did not come out. And that's going to be key to understanding this election. Actually, didn't put this down, but let me do some math here. We have 16 million different votes, or less votes out of, let's use a bigger number, 245 points. That is a drop of 6% of the voting average, or voting eligible people. 6.5% fewer people turned out to vote, as if we compare it to the previous year instead. only about 90% of the people turned out to vote from time. That is a pretty huge drop. Keep in mind, we're still just barely over 50% that turned out at all. Uh, Trump's votes, as of right now, this may change once California is fully counted. 74.2 million in 2020, only 73.4 million in 2024. That's a drop of 816,000 votes. And like I said, may still come up with more total votes ahead, but definitely not keeping up with the percentage that we have there. When it came to Biden, he garnered 81.3 million votes. Harris only got 69 million. That's a drop of 12.2 million votes. And that is, once again, a huge drop there. That makes a huge difference in the results. What we're looking at is not a case where it seems that a whole bunch of people moved over from voting for Biden to voting for Trump. That's not the difference. The difference is that for the most part, the same voters. You look at the NBC exit results, like 2% of Trump voters went over to Harris, and 4% of Biden voters went over to Trump. It's not big numbers here. And there's switch back and forth. It's not that the Latinos want Trump or black men or anything like that. It comes down to those same groups. They didn't show up to vote. They didn't have anything that they felt they needed to vote on. They were rejecting both major candidates and saying it wasn't worth their time to vote for third party candidate, if they even knew who the third party candidates were, because we don't have that in this country. We ignore third parties unless we want to attack them. That's been the general trend here. But to get into it, and because I want to get this out quick, and I still have a video I shot in May that I haven't edited on Thomas Jefferson. I have a sort of a script here. Parts are scripted, parts are not. We're going to go through it, and I'm going to cover everything and give you a much better idea. And I'm going to be speaking a lot more fluently through this part. Latinos didn't move significantly toward Trump. Black men didn't move significantly toward Trump. Youth votes didn't move significantly toward Trump. They stayed home because they were unenthused by Kamala. Let's be clear how Kamala ran. She insisted she would be a continuation of Biden and would only differ from him by moving right more. Biden was not only disliked because he was senile, claimed to be the first black woman president, and declared he had defeated Medicare. He was disliked because he reneged on campaign promises and was far more right-wing of a president than he promised. She was once asked if she would consider putting a Republican in her cabinet and said yes, but then actively volunteered that she absolutely would be appointing one in a different interview. She blew off the anti-genocide and stressed that she was standing with Israel. She kept insisting that the economy was doing good and what wasn't going to correct the systemic issues that Americans have been sick of for decades. Raging wealth inequality, the failure of the masses to benefit from the past 50 years of massive productivity increases, the constant living paycheck to paycheck, etc. She stopped protecting trans people. Biden and Harris adopted Trump's anti-immigrant stances to the point of pushing a bill that would give unprecedented power to federal agencies to shut down the border without oversight. Kamala ran hard towards the center, trying to even cross it so that the median voter would have to vote for her. And everyone to her left would have no choice but to do the same. It's a perversion of a very old model of American elections from the 1950s, which argues that candidates should come as close to the center as possible without being flanked by a third party candidate. They kind of forget that part and just attack third parties that they dare run because they want to go that far to the right without any problem. We know very well now that third party candidates, clearly to the right or left of both major political parties, or both major political party candidates, may give voters whose second choice may be either of those two candidates. Back in Florida in 2000, only 60% of Nader's voters said that their second choice was Gore. 40% said their second choice was Bush. It's not taking only from one candidate, if it's taking at all. Not necessarily the closest one to that third party candidate. And we also know that there's always a good chance that without that third party candidate, those voters might not turn up at the polls at all. They will come out for Jill Stein or Chase Oliver, but they weren't ever going to come out for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. Before her, Joe Biden was pressured by the fact that Bernie Sanders was the front runner in the Democratic primary before everyone dropped out on the same day to endorse him, including the surprise endorser, Elizabeth Warren, which doomed Sanders. And I so did not see Elizabeth Warren dropping out to back Biden instead of Bernie. That was an absolute shock for me. In order to not see the Democratic Party fall apart, he didn't run to the center. He ran a bit to the left. I wasn't fooled by it, but many Americans were. He beat Trump running to the left. Before him, Hillary Clinton rigged two primary elections, not only the Democratic primary, but she rigged the Republican primary by pushing media outlets to treat Donald Trump and Ted Cruz as serious contenders so as to improve her chances of winning. The leaked emails called this these emails. Every single one which was challenged was proven to be a real email. Notably, Donna Brazil's email giving Hillary debate questions before the debate. She lost to Trump even though her electors got more votes than Trump's electors. I'll get to that in a minute, but the fact is that running towards the center led to two losses, and running to the left got a win. Why did Trump win in 2016 when no one saw it coming? He rallied his base and got people who normally stayed home to come out and vote for Orange Hitler. How did Bernie Sanders perform so strongly in the Democratic primaries? He rallied the base and got people who normally stayed home or voted third party to come out and vote for him in the primary. When it comes to the status quo, Americans are fed up with it and they are rejecting it with vigor. A minority of Americans will go to vote for a Nazi for change. A minority will vote to Nazi. But a majority of Americans, including members of both those previous groups, will turn out to elect a guy who is far to the left of the Democrats, but still ever so slightly on the right of the full political spectrum. Bernie hasn't been a Democratic Socialist since 1984 when he left the Liberty Union Party, which was the Vermont local of the Socialist Party USA. That's my party. As he began to believe capitalism could be fixed, he went to our label and then, when forced to define it, chose, I think people who work 40 hours should have health care. He's still at the center of the full spectrum. Okay, so to recap, Harris and Clinton didn't lose because they were women, nor the Harris is non-white. People who care about that already were voting Republican one way or another. By and large, you're going to find strays in anywhere in the data. That's normal. It's not going to be a perfect split, but it's very marginal, very insubstantial with outside the Republican Party. The people have a problem voting for someone who isn't white or voting for a person who isn't a man. That did not lose her the votes, though it did make it kind of stupid to go try to get voters from the people who don't like black people, don't like Indian people, don't like women. Not the ideal people to chase for votes. But she insisted on doing that. They lost because they abandoned their base and people didn't want to show up for that. We can also talk about mixed messaging. She spoke about how Donald Trump is a fascist and a threat to democracy, but at the same time, spoke about reaching out to the party built around him over the past 8 years and putting one in her cabinet. But why Trump? Why would Trump, of all people, win? He was a horrible, horrible candidate. The man clearly is senile at this point. He does not fully understand what's going on. He just keeps talking and talking. He is very good at just not finishing a thought, jumping onto something else. Every time he says something crazy, you don't have time to grasp it because he says something else crazy immediately afterwards, within your reaction time. He will go argue with himself. This past election, we had the Epstein tapes dropped, which said that not only was he still friends with Jeffrey Epstein before his death, Jeffrey Epstein had access to the White House. He knew what was going on inside, what people were saying, all those kinds of things. Trump was like this. Let me tell you, I do not believe that Epstein killed himself. The one person who had both motive and had the ability to have him killed is Donald Trump. He was the person who is above the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Who could have had him killed? Donald Trump could have had him killed. Hillary Clinton, she's already been embarrassed by Bill. Fuck Bill Clinton is probably going on in her head. He wasn't the one who was accused of rape by someone there anyways. That was Donald Trump. But Bill Clinton was buddy with Jeff Epstein one way or another. Now, she also doesn't have pull. She was the first lady ending in the year 2000. 20 years later, or not, almost 20 years later, you think that she has control over the head of the Bureau of Prisons, who very well may not have even been a federal employee back then. I'm not looking up who actually was in charge or when their career started. But usually when you have somebody at the top, they may not have been in doing that kind of thing 20 years before. You don't usually have career bureaucrats put in charge of agencies. You have political buddies. And who would that have been? That would have been a Republican that Trump put in. So if Epstein's dead, that is almost certainly Donald Trump's doing. But I mean, have that. He was going on and on about how he's going to kill all his enemies and arrest people left and right. Uh, JD Vance was just fucking weird, um, transphobic guy with thick eyeliner, mascara. You don't get to be a man and wear makeup if you're transphobic. No. Um, you have you have the whole Puerto Rico thing, and of course there's worse jokes in there, but that's the one that seems to have really inflamed people. Just saying that Puerto Rico is a pile of garbage is not really a joke. That's just a statement, not a funny one at that. But there is no reason that people would come out for Donald Trump, and they really didn't. Not anybody more than his core supporters. We are talking um, less than 1/3 of the population that was eligible to vote came out and voted for Trump. Less than 1/3, and he still won. So it's not that Donald Trump ran some great campaign. It is that Kamala Harris ran a horrible campaign. I can't believe it. I thought we were safe when Joe Biden dropped out. But nope, I was wrong there. We can. Trump is a fascist. We risk society collapsing in 2050 due to climate change. We risk not. We risk genocide, including of people like me, in this next 4 years. Trans hate or eradicating transgenderism, as they like to put it. These were central to Trump's platform, and trans people were among the first victim of white Hitler's Nazis. You threw your political opponents in the camps, and the first big thing they went to destroy was the institute that was first looking into transgender identity and recognizing it. That got shut down by Hitler really fast, really fast. It is definitely, trans people are a common Nazi target. By no means is it a good thing that Donald Trump won. We would be in a better situation with Harris, even though Harris sucks. There are existential issues. This is a huge barrier to a peaceful transition to power, as we may see future elections canceled or rigged to an extent that's impossible for anyone, not just third parties, to win besides the Republicans, no matter the will of the electorate. But Donald Trump represents change. Change from neoliberalism that has failed us. Some voters are attracted to that, and others are just unwilling to turn out for more of a system that actively hurts them and holds them back, even with an even worse proposition in tow. Oh, that isn't rational to you? Reality doesn't care about what makes sense to you. The best you can hope for is for it to retroactively decide which slit a particle went through because you tried to observe the answer. People are not fully rational beings. Locke was wrong about human nature, and I still have to get to that video. I'm going to get to it one day, and hopefully get to a whole lot more right after that. But Locke was wrong about human nature. A lot of people will say, I'm fucked either way. I don't care who wins. Now, I want to tell you about something I was told by my friend Angela. We're in Michigan. It's very easy to vote in Michigan. We're a swing state, but we very easy to vote in Michigan. We don't have long lines. We don't have. We have. If you want to vote by mail, you can vote by mail. You want to do early voting, you can do early voting. There's plenty. It's not hard for us to vote in Michigan. Definitely not in the area that we're in. I imagine you probably do have still somewhat worse in Detroit, but I don't have firsthand experience of voting in the city itself. They may have a bit longer of lines than we do, but it's still not the horror stories like in Georgia. Now, Angela was sort of shocked because she overheard some people speaking at work about how they just didn't vote. Why did they not bother to vote? Because they didn't like either candidate. And this is what's going on. Angela's not super political herself. I kind of hounded her to vote. It's like, you gotta vote. You gotta vote. I don't want to die. You have to actually go out there and vote. But yeah, your average people, these are not, super high wage workers, not super low wage workers either. These are I'd say lower mid level workers. They didn't bother showing up. And knowing where the staff at her work, that you probably had at least one person of color in there who's saying, "No, I'm just didn't bother to go out to vote." And it's because they didn't like Kamala Harris. They didn't like Trump either. They didn't go vote for Trump. They just stayed home because Kamala Harris failed to give them anything to vote for. And now I want you to think of the city voter in Georgia waiting outside for 4 to 6 hours because the state government strategically closed polling stations where it's illegal to give them water or food if their blood sugar falls. After making arrangements to get childcare or get off work so they can vote. It's a sacrifice for them to go out there and cast a single vote. You expect them to do it? Then you need to give them something to vote for, not just something to vote against. The Democratic Party goes out of their way not to give them things to vote for. It's always the Republicans are bad. This is the worst thing ever. We don't want to make you any actual promises because we don't want to deliver when we're in office, and we don't want to be called on not delivering when we are actually in office. Which, of course, is what fuels why they never show up. For decades, Democrats have played a game of running to the center. They have played a game of not making promises of making promises and not delivering. Do you remember in 2009 when they had the Triple Crown, the House, the Senate, filibuster-proof margins, and the presidency? They couldn't even vote on the government option Obama campaigned on because they didn't want to deliver it. Remember when they had that in 2022 and Roe v. Wade was overturned? They could have done what they wanted. They could have immediately established a Department of Abortions, which would offer speedy and free abortions across the country to anybody who needed it. Speedy and free abortions. Anyone who wanted one and funded the hell out of it. Instead, they turned it into a campaign issue. Vote for us again, and we'll protect abortion rights next term, even though they could have already been doing it. They lost the House after pulling that, despite having a massive turnout by women. The people want Medicare for all. No vote, at least not until the Republicans could block it. The people want action on climate change. They water it down so it probably won't be enough to stop societal collapse. People want strong unions. Biden breaks the strike and gives the company everything they want when Democrats could have instead given the union everything they wanted, and their demands were extremely reasonable. They should have given the railroad workers significantly more than they asked for. But no, Biden groveled a bit afterward in the shadows, and rather than doing what he should have done from the start. Democrats do not deliver on their promises. This is something that comes time and time again. Republicans deliver. Donald Trump promised one fuck of a lot. He delivered on a wide swath of it. There were very meaningful changes done under Trump. They were really bad things. He may have been blocked on some things, like the wall. He may have been completely ineffective on stopping people from coming in, because but he sure as hell made it a hellhole. He separated people, children from their families. He was propagandizing them. Literally, have you ever seen the pictures of the inside of these centers? They have goddamn Donald Trump, like trying to indoctrinate these children who were separated from their parents after being brought in the country undocumented. It's atrocious. But he did that. There were forced sterilizations. We can't say for sure that Trump ordered it, but he sure as hell allowed it and created a culture in which people want to make that decision, made it. There were women who were sterilized because they were Latina. They always err to the right, and they come down hard on the relatively left wing within their own ranks and scheme against them, but drag their feet on prosecuting enemies of the state who tried to violently overthrow the government because their candidate, who was extremely privileged by our electoral system, didn't win. Ashley Babbitt was shot on January 6th, and good. She was a fucking enemy combatant. Yet Democrats are more interested in working hard to stop Bernie Sanders than to stop Trump. Biden didn't run in 2020 to stop Trump. He ran to stop Bernie. That is the cold, hard facts. The Democrats are not your friends. I also want you to look at the electoral dynamics the Democratic Party has had since 1992, when the New Democrats took over. They run hard to the center, uncomfortably close for the Republicans. The Republicans then move the right to pick up more voters, new voters. Rinse and repeat. You know that there's this thing called the Overton window. The fascists definitely know about it. It isn't their thing, but they cite it all the time. It describes a span of political views that are viewed as acceptable in society. When the Democrats move to the center, or you could say they move to the right, they stop pushing talking points on the left and pick up talking points on the right. Republicans then pick up new right-wing talking points. Due to both sidesism in America, the Overton window then shifts to the right. What was once an acceptable viewpoint becomes some fringe left-wing view, and what was once a fringe right-wing view, let's actually trying to keep black people from voting, becomes acceptable. We have had 32 years of this game. Most voters shifted with it, and your Democrat support things that they have been voting to stop 30 years ago, or they would have been voting to stop 30 years ago, and Republicans are pushing ideas that were once unthinkable. You lose ground every time you go this way. And I want to make it clear, you have a significant proportion of people, including media outlets, who insist on being right in the middle. Look at CNN. They were right wing, Trump gets elected. They seem like they're on the left now. So they fire the guy in charge and hire somebody who's further to the right so they appear in the center again. The center is moving to the right, and it's because the Democrats are doing it. They're not putting in the arguments to actually lead. They're not leading anyone. They have no ideas of their own. They're just trying to maintain the status quo. They are the conservative party right now. They want the status quo. They want things to stay the same. They want everything to be civil and everybody get along. We're just going to go with the motion, completely devoid of any actual values. All they care about is everything staying relatively the same, which is exactly what voters hate. They don't want what we have now. There's voters who are out there saying, well, if we can't get Bernie, we're going for Trump. Because at least Trump's going to change something. Maybe it'll be better than this hellhole we live in now. It's going to be worse. It was worse the first time. But that's what they go for. But the Democrats don't learn. They just keep going with the same thing. Right now, you have goddamn centrist Democrats going on TV saying the problem is the left, that Kamala Harris didn't run far enough to the right. She crossed the damn line. Both candidates were on the right, and she lost because Donald Trump had very happy, motivated um, right wing voters. Kamala Harris had a few left wing voters who were very unenthusiastic and a few unenthusiastic centrist voters. That's what she had. That's why she lost, because she couldn't get the vast majority that's on the left. When you're going for 32 years, moving over, and you have these people that keep dropping out saying, it's not worth it. I'm just not going to vote. Where do you think they're coming from? These are disillusioned left wing voters. They would come out and they would vote for someone like Bernie Sanders. They would come out and they would vote for someone like Bill Stodden. They're not going to come out and vote for Kamala Harris. Democrats keep losing voters together. A few of these moderate voters, they got the Cheneys. When I voted in 2004 for John Kerry out of fear, it was out of fear of Dick Cheney. I'm not 100% sure why he decided he wants to support Kamala Harris this time around, despite pushing for the unitary executive theory for all these years. Possibly because he does legitimately love his lesbian daughter and he doesn't want to see her die, and thinks that's a real possibility. That's the only thing I can come up with that would cause this man, who fought for decades for the type of authoritarian leadership that Donald Trump has, saying, I'm voting for Kamala Harris. I don't want Trump to have that. Because that's what Dick Cheney actually fought for years. He's afraid of Trump for some reason. And this is also the man who shot his friend. Dick Cheney shot his friend in the face, and his friend apologized to him for all the hubbub that rose up over it. That is, that's not a man who would normally be afraid. He at least had the sense of humor to march out once to the Imperial Death March from Star Wars, Darth Vader's theme music. Because that is how evil Dick Cheney is. But Dick Cheney came over saying, Trump is too much for me. And that's what really Kamala Harris was relying on, saying, look, Donald Trump is the extreme one, not me. And yeah, voters saw that. And that's why voters stayed home, because they want somebody who's much more extreme than Kamala Harris. They don't want Trump, but they're not going to come out and bother to vote for Kamala Harris, even when it's relatively easy to do it. Now, where were we? This is, of course, assuming that you have principles. It assumes that you are engaging in politics because there's something that you believe in and want to make happen. Politics do shape our lives. They determine how good our lives are and what our rights are. If you are voting the lesser evil, who keeps moving to the right, and then the greater evil you wanted to stop, this started, let's say Reagan, if this started running against Bush Sr., you end up passing him by. You end up more evil than that original greater evil. This is not a good long term game to play. Kamala didn't lose because she's a woman. She didn't lose because she isn't white. And god damn, she didn't lose because she campaigned too far to the left. Give the Democratic establishment a couple more elections and they'll sound like Donald Trump in 2016. She lost because people reject neoliberalism. In the 1930s, FDR addressed this with the New Deal, and people loved him for it, despite being nowhere near as good as where he stole the ideas from and then watered them down. Because the New Deal was basically stuff from the Socialist Party of America's platform watered down. None of it was the actual thing that was suggested, but it was a watered down version of it, and people were desperate for that. There was a fascist threat then, and that was pushed aside. In the recent past, there's more call for that, and instead, the Democrats made sure we did not go that way. We are going with the fascists. Biden wasn't going to win either, and would have lost by a little more or would have lost by more this time. More than Kamala Harris lost by. It was a good move to replace him. People knew he was running to the right. They lived through his presidency. With that said, we did not lose democracy this election. It's possible we lost elections, but we haven't lost democracy. Why is that? It's because we didn't have democracy before this election. We have two parties that oppose democracy, one outright and the other subtly. Did you know that there was a Democratic primary in 2020? Most of you probably don't. Because the media didn't speak of it. Among the few candidates that ran was Dean Phillips, a U.S. House member elected from Minnesota. He and all his campaign staff were blacklisted from working with the Democratic Party in the future because he dared run against Joe Biden. When sued, the DNC argued in court that they were a private that could nominate whomever they please, even if it breaks their own rules to do so. If Bernie Sanders won all 50 states, there is a strong chance Hillary Clinton would have still been the Democratic nominee in 2016. The DNC worked hard behind the scenes to make sure that Hillary won. Yet, apparently, Russia was the source of Hillary's emails. It was more Podesta's emails that were damning, but let's just say Russia was behind that too, even though I don't think they ever showed that Russia was behind Podesta's emails. Is Russia fascist? Is Russia fascist at this point? Yes. Did they share it with good intentions? No. People deserve to have. It is something we should be paying attention to now. The Democratic Party is a corrupt institution. They exist to promote the interests of the super rich, the owner class, classically known as the bourgeoisie. The Republicans do too. And goddamn, yes, Republican Party and everything related to Trump is corrupt as all hell. More corrupt than the Democratic Party. That doesn't excuse the Democratic Party. So long as one of these Two win, the rich win. Don't believe me? In 2014, we had a paper published by Gillens and Page from Cambridge, which looked at American political decisions with polling data from before that decision, covering the years 1981 to 2002. Now we're going to look at Gillens and Page, and it's going to take me a moment to get over there properly, because I'm doing this live. So, share screen. I have to make sure I select the correct one. I have too many things open right now. Why don't I see that particular window? Okay, give me a moment here. Is this what? No, it should be saying testing theories of American politics. All right. And so what we're going to try, I switch over to that. And I'm going to switch back to see that heading. Nope. So what we're going to do is we're going to share my entire screen. I'm going to jump over here back to testing theories of American politics. 2014. Put forward by Gillens and scroll up here. Martin Gillens and Benjamin Page. It's out of Massachusetts there. They looked at whether you're one of America is one of the four groups. Let's see what they listed. Here we go. They looked at who has power, average citizen, economic elites, mass-based or business groups, or industries. This is what they're looking at. Here we go. Majoritarian electoral democracy, elite, economic elite domination, and the majority. These two are considered interest group pluralism. And it's not showing me. It's listed all the things. And if we go down, we can go see majoritarian electoral democracy, economic elite domination, majoritarian pluralism, biased pluralism. And they originally say the median voter does get what they want most of the time with decisions. I think we see it here. Average citizen, their model 1, 64% of the time, the average person gets what they want. But when they start factoring in and correcting for what the elites want, it changes. Because, I'll just read it right here. Furthermore, the preferences of economic elites, as measured by our proxy, the preferences of citizens, have far more independent impact upon policy change than the preferences of average citizens do. To be sure, this does not mean that ordinary citizens always lose out. They fairly often get the policies they favor, but only because those policies happen to be preferred by the economically elite citizens who wield the actual influence. Give me just one moment. I'm going to be right back here. I just had to blow my nose. That's why I was getting super nasally. Okay. And you may have read some of this more while I was there. It is available free online. Cambridge puts it out. They're very proud of it. And you can check that whenever you want. I gotta go stop sharing my screen for a moment. Boom, I am back in. I can go back to the script area. Now, there was a backlash to this study, and there are several commentaries published attacking this paper. You might be listening to people like Vosh, who dismissed it by saying he heard people said it was wrong. Gillens and Page have stood firm and debunked the challenges to their paper, and there is a reason people are still being assigned Gillens and Page in grad school now. I think I've had 3 classes where it was involved. None of them cover the detractors. Why? Because the detractors' arguments were not convincing, and you rarely read commentaries anyway. As I recall, the most prominent of these commentaries argues that people often get what they want. And so it is a democracy. And we just read the article that already addressed this. That part of the article I just covered, I read aloud to you. It addressed that exact thing. 64% of the time they get what they want, but that's only because they agree with the super rich. Super rich got what they want 99% of the time. They got what they wanted. When you look, I don't think it was. I'm not sure if the people themselves get what they want over the oligarchs 1% of the time, but it's very likely that just nobody gets what they want, but the politicians themselves in that 1% of the time. As far as experts are concerned, Gillens and Page stands up. Crossy and Archie are about power, not whether the people sometimes get what they want when they happen to agree with their betters. The people often get what they want under a monarchy when they happen to agree with the monarch. It is when the power is in the hands of the people that we have democracy, when they get what they want, regardless of these special interest groups. And that very much is what the rich are. They are an interest group. And that too, yeah. You see, democracy is more than simply a system in which people vote. Oligarchies vote. As I put forward in my first video, Pericles described the experience of what democracy meant to Athens. Its administration is in favor of the many, and that is why we call it democracy. Sure, people voted. You do need the people to vote to have a democracy. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But what stands out is what you get from that voting in a democracy. The policies then favor the people. That's not us. It's the exact opposite of us. The oligarchs get what they want. Those are the people who are those economic elites and corporations, the business interests. They get what they want 99% of the time. Democracy has a meaning, and we cannot pretend that we are ruling when we have such wealth and income disparity, and the economic elites can come down and sweep aside our candidates because they have the money, they have the media, they can pay intelligent people well to think of bullshit to tell us. Poor people banding together can rarely afford to pay anyone. Now, Oh, okay. I think I skipped a big section here, and that's my bad. Um, can we start from here again? My bad. Our policies favor the oligarchs vote against one or the other. And so now we're going to go to something else, which you may have already. And we are going to share again. If anyone has advice on a good streaming site or whatnot, please give me advice because I don't care for this particular one. I find it too. And here I can go just directly to that. Okay. Don't know why it wasn't showing up before. Douglas Adams. This is from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it is most certainly about the type of electoral system we have here in America, possibly in Britain as well. Comes from a very ancient democracy, you see. You mean it comes from a world of lizards? No, said Ford, who by this time was a little more rational and coherent than he had been, having finally had the coffee forced down him. Nothing so simple. Nothing anything like so straightforward. On its world, the people are people. The leaders are lizards. The people hate the lizards, and the lizards rule the people. Odd, said Arthur. I thought you said it was a democracy. I did, said Ford. It is. So, said Arthur, hoping he wasn't sounding ridiculously obtuse. Why don't people get rid of the lizards? It honestly doesn't occur to them, said Ford. They've all got the vote. So they all pretty much assume that the government they voted in more or less approximates to the government they want. You mean they actually vote for the lizards? Oh yes, said Ford with a shrug. Of course. But, said Arthur, going for the big one again, why? Because if they didn't vote for a lizard, said Ford, the wrong lizard might get in. Got any gin? What? I said Ford with an increasing air of urgency creeping into his voice. Have you got any gin? Oh, look, tell me about the lizards. Ford shrugged again. Some people say that the lizards are the best thing that ever happened to them, he said. They're completely wrong, of course. Completely and utterly wrong. But someone's got to say it. But that's terrible, said Arthur. Listen, Bud, said Ford. If I had $1 Altarian for every time I heard one bit of the universe, look at another bit of the universe and say, that's terrible, I wouldn't be sitting here like a lemon looking for a gin. Ah, so let's get rid of that. And I'm assuming that's Hitchhiker's Galaxy because that other lines from it. Maybe I'm not much of a fiction reader, so I could be wrong there exactly what So Long and Thanks for All the Fish is, but it does seem to be one way or another the same author. And so we're going to stop sharing that. We only have one more thing I got to direct you over for eventually. But now, well, I voted for a lizard. I knew she was a lizard. After 20 years since the last time I gave in to fear, I felt there had become enough of a difference between the two parties to vote for a lizard. The wrong lizard still won. We are presented with lizards each election, and I've been voting for non lizards most elections. Um, but most of us still do so. Despite having an electoral system, a really, really shitty electoral system, but an electoral system that can technically be used for an indirect democracy, we never use it that way. We stick to the oligarchs' options, and the will of the people is never actually realized. We don't get policies that favor us, but just policies that favor the oligarchs. Democracy has a meaning, and we cannot pretend that we are ruling when we have such wealth and income disparity, and the economic elites can come on down and sweep aside our candidates. And that's where I was going, and I don't know how I jumped there earlier. But poor people banding together can barely afford to pay anyone. I held out. I knew it was a possibility early on, but I knew that I could always vote for the lizard when I cast my vote. There is zero reason to be like the welfare liberals out there who are priming everyone to vote for Biden while there were still people to his left running in the primary. There's no reason to do it until right before the end. Right before the election. Right before the election, I saw that we had no chance at doing better. I saw that Trump is a legitimate threat this time, and I voted for a lizard only then. I should also note, I noticed that there was not a chance that someone like Jill Stein was going to get the 5% um, to get the free funding from the government for campaigns. That wasn't there. And when you're looking at these hundreds of millions of dollars, even $1 billion campaigns, the idea that they're running for what, so like $20 million a campaign cycle, that's the kind of difference that you have between someone like the Democratic Republican Party and third parties. Third parties don't have the money behind them. So it really relies much more on us to get the word out when it comes to that. If you don't even fight for better or fight for better, then you have no right to complain. It is those actions that brought about these horrible candidates, and you're yelling out, you can take me for granted. You can ignore my wishes. You betrayed your brethren, and you lied to the Democrats, telling them that they'd win even while ignoring you. You helped pave the way for Trump by playing the oligarchs game. I didn't do that in 2020. Biden wasn't going to do enough to stop climate change. I didn't think he was up to the challenge of rising to the times instead of making it about himself. And I thought he would end up normalizing Trump. I would say I was right on all three counts. That isn't to say I have a crystal ball. I thought Harris was going to squeak one by because Trump ran a god awful campaign full of flubs, divisive talk, hate speech, and the man is clearly senile. You can tell when he isn't directly next to Joe Biden. Note, I'm not suggesting actual lizard people. That is a conspiracy theory promoted by idiots and unhinged people like the woman who accused me of misgendering her, as I am now, on the basis not that she's not a woman, but that she's a lizard person. A lizard person is not a gender, folks, nor is it something that exists on this planet. Somewhere in the great vastness of the universe, almost certainly, but not here. Really, America was created not to be a democracy. From the very beginning, we had fear mongering over the threat of the largest faction. Quote Marx faction, because that's the word they use. They didn't say party, they said faction, but party and faction are the same thing. They were understood to be the same thing at that point. The largest faction of regular folk would take the money away from the landowners. Our whole electoral system is designed around the fear of a working class party taking what is theirs. And so let us go back, and we are going to once again share screen. Here we go. All right, Federalist Paper number 10. The Union as a safeguard against domestic faction and insurrection, from the New York Packet, written by James Madison, who also in this one redefines republic to be an indirect democracy, which is not the meaning of republic at all. It's used often today because of Madison, but traditionally, republic has to do with it's closer to a commonwealth. It is you have that shared interest. Athens, where they have the direct democracy voting, that was considered a republic. Rome, where wasn't a whole lot of representation for the lower classes. They could just basically veto some stuff. That was considered a republic. It's not good enough to be called an indirect democracy. There wasn't enough democracy happening there at all. It was Rome was more or less an oligarchy. The poor did get something when they really fought hard, and that's covered in my first video. But not that. Now, going here, you may have been reading some of this along, but this is him arguing about how horrible faction is and how they were going to stop it. And this, by the way, is why we have a two-party system, because they wanted no parties. Actually, in here, they actually argue that I'm going to go into that a little bit there after this, but I'm going to show you this particular line here. Because this is Madison arguing why you are worried about these factions. But the most common and durable source of factions has been the various and unequal distribution of property. Those who hold and those who are without property have ever formed distinct interests in society. Those who are creditors, those who are debtors, fall under a like discrimination. A landed interest, a manufacturing interest, a mercantile interest, a moneyed interest, with many lesser interests, grow up of necessity in civilized nations and divide them into different classes, actuated by different sentiments and views. The regulation of these various and interfering interests forms the principal task of modern legislation and involves the spirit of the party and faction in the necessary and ordinary operations of government. That is why factions were so bad, because of the most durable and common and durable source being the wealth and income inequality, and they're afraid that the majority, the 99%, were going to come for the 1% and take the fair share. So that's why we have a two-party system, which is not what they would want if they could only have, if they were unable to stop factions from happening. I mean, what they were thinking, I don't know, because Madison even just acknowledged that this happens naturally in all civilized nations, as he put it. Once you hit, you have different interests, it's going to show up, or you're going to have these factions. You're not stopping it by having a system that runs without parties, which is also why electors were all supposed to vote on themselves, because there were no parties for candidates. They just were to figure out who the best person was. It was going to be some rich person. That was the intent. If a faction consists of less than a majority, relief is supplied by the majority Republican principle, which enables the majority to defeat its sinister views by a regular vote. It may clog the administration, it may convulse the society, but it will be unable to execute and mask its violence under the forms of the Constitution. So the easiest thing is to have a less than a majority. So you can't have a two-party system and make that happen. You need at least three to have one of the parties, the biggest party, still be a minority of the population that the others can vote down. So you're looking at a multi-party system would be the solution to this, but they messed up royally. When a majority is included in the faction, the form of popular government or populism, on the other hand, enables it to sacrifice its ruling passion or interests, both the public good and the rights of other citizens, to secure the public good and private rights against the danger of such a faction, at the same time to preserve the spirit and form of popular government. It is then the great object to which our inquiries are directed. And I know I'm not going to drag you through it while I find it, but it may have been Rousseau rather than them. But there's a suggestion that, hey, if you have that majority that is has their own separate interests, you're going to break it up into several different interests. And then you no longer have the majority and everyone can vote down their insanity. That's not what we have. We have where a minority can come in and take control and have their interests preserved, which unfortunately is what the founders intended. And it's the same damn interest, more or less. It is those economic elites. Let's stop sharing. And I am going to get back to it. Oh, I do have something else I have to show you. But it's not on that. It's not like that. And let's take a look at some bad statements from Democrats that have been constraining us for decades. And I will make sure I close that beforehand so I don't get confused. And that is not the right one. Okay. And I do have this already prepared for you. So give me a moment here. Oh, and I'm going to do a reboot after this for sure. Okay. Videos. Not videos, not videos. Recorded videos. I don't know why it's got 6 items. Windows is going slow because it uses up RAM for no good reason. All right. Here we go. This is the one that I needed. Had it prepped yesterday, but messed it up because I did not have, because I was checking what I was uploading earlier, it ended up overwriting it essentially. But rid of that too while we're at it. It's just not opening. This is partially because I do not reopen pretty much ever, or I don't reboot my damn computer like I should. I just leave it running 24/7. All right. And yeah, I'm going to keep. This is basically just bad arguments by prominent liberals, and we talk about them after each of them.
Voters like you to hear is anything.
Yep, we are going to wait till I have that being shared. So let's go back to share screen. We are selecting. We're going to go back to sharing the full screen because I don't know why that's not easily visible.
I want voters like you to hear anything but a vote for her. We're to being a vote for him, right?
There we get Pete Buttigieg making the awful argument that a vote for him or vote for anybody other than Harris is voting for Trump. That's not how it works. The math doesn't work out. You is an insane thing, and it's extremely undemocratic. You could as easily say that everyone who voted for Harris was voting for Trump because they weren't voting for Jill Stein. It's just as valid. Move forward a little bit.
I hear over and over again young people saying to me, well, obviously, I'm not going to vote for Trump. But I have a very hard time voting for Harris because she's part of an administration that has been supplying offensive weapons to Israel. And look at 40,000 Palestinians who have died. Now, what I say back is, if you think Trump is going to do a better job than the Biden-Harris administration for the Palestinians, you're crazy. You're crazy. And they say back to me, but I'm tired of having to choose between the lesser of two evils.
Right. And it's the principle, and this is where I have some agency.
And I say, well, welcome to politics.
I know.
Welcome to democracy. Mm-hmm. It's all about, nuance and making decisions and doing the best we can.
And weighing the.
And there we had Robert Reich. Stop sharing there. All right. Yeah. There was Robert Reich arguing some very bad things where he fundamentally misunderstands what democracy is. Because if you notice there, the power wasn't in the hands of the people. He's telling people that you are powerless other than to choose between these two choices that were given to you. You're going to get this or you're going to get that. Do not consider anything else. You do not get to decide what two choices there's going to be. You have to give up everything, but you get to pick these two choices that the oligarch said, hey, these two are okay. It's fundamentally undemocratic. That's not about being an adult. That's not about being engaging in democracy. That's not politics of all sorts. That's one particular type of politics, but it's not democratic politics. Really, this is what we are dealing with is a concept. It's a meme. Memes are little ideas. These are cognitive genes, you could say. That's what one good thing that Richard Dawkins ever did was come up with the idea of memes. And we seem to have bastardized that and just call it pictures on the internet. But which often spread actual memes inside them. But the meme is that if you don't vote for this one way you're being a child. You're not taking it seriously. You have to go between this. That is fundamentally undemocratic. We, after 200 and how many years has it been? It's been damn near 250. We're 2 years away from 250 years of this country existing. We've been going through, I guess you could subtract 15 years of that. So 235 because the Constitution wasn't there yet. But we've been going through this over and over where there's not real control for the people. Why is this not being fixed? It's not in the interest of the oligarchs to fix it. They're still getting their way, even though you're disgruntled. And what are you going to do about it? Vote third party? No, because you're stuck voting for the lesser evil. And that is a trap that we got into. We could pick any party we want and we can make it. There was a Internet Freedom Party, I think it was called, back in 96, who's had two things that on their platform. Number one was that the internet cannot be regulated whatsoever. Number two was they were going to assassinate the guy they were electing president. That was the two things on their platform. We could theoretically, elect that if we wanted. Not a good choice, but we have that power if we really wanted to. There's tons of stuff against it. A lot of stuff that makes it harder. Ballot access is a pain in the ass. Why? Because they complain. Major parties complained that it was too costly for the states to print the ballots when there was never any actual problem. There was never had too large of ballots. You never had too many ballots when you used to have different colored ballots where it was unfeasible. It's just an excuse that they made up to narrow down the alternatives, to keep it so that there's two parties. Because we haven't always had just these same two parties. We've been a two-party system. We were a one-party system for a while there. But we switched parties over time. The Federalists became the Whigs. The Whigs became the Republicans. I think there was another switch in between there too, before the Federalists became the Whigs. But these are the way that parties were replaced when they became undesirable. And the Whig Party became undesirable because they would not act on slavery. Republican Party was going to act, and they weren't even going to go very strong with it. The original plan was that they're going to compensate slave owners slowly, and maybe by around 1900, 1910, 1920, we would be done with slavery, and all the slave owners would be reimbursed for all the slaves that were freed, and so on. But the South decided to go throw a fit about that idea, got into a war, and the result of it was, okay, no, we're just going to free all the slaves in your area. Oh, well, we've already done that. We might as well just, while the South is out of the Union, Senate may as well sign the amendments outlawing slavery in the United States. Except for prisoners. Prisoners we can still, be slaves. If you're convicted if you're in prison for a crime of which you've already been duly convicted, they're allowed to put you to work. And you have no actual rights. And that's sad, but that's how it worked. So we have to fight, not to save, but to bring democracy to America for the first time. We need more runway, a whole lot more major two parties. So we're going for 2026 and 2028 starting right now. We voted 4 days ago. We're starting right now. If you fucked up and you paved the way for Trump, jump on, redeem yourself. If you fucked up and you actually voted for Trump because you thought voting for a fascist was the way out from the slavery and neoliberalism, and voted for me to be murdered by the state, stay to the back but jump on. Redeem yourself as a pure follower until you earn our trust back. Our enemy isn't immigrants. It isn't minorities. It isn't LGBTQIA people. It isn't extremists. It isn't even people misapplying academic scholarship to make unhinged claims that right-wingers think woke is. Because they have no idea what woke is. Just being aware of systemic oppression, period. Our enemy are the very people who created the neoliberal hell that everyone wants away from, other than the Democratic Party. It's fascist too, but they're led by those same people we all hate. Donald Trump is one of those economic oligarchs who brought us here. This is about the people. First thing here, the blue sky has fallen. The Democratic Party is dead. So many relied on it to just stop fascism. It failed miserably. It is resistant to change. They will rig primaries, even if not the general election itself. Trump was insisting they rig the general election. No, they have no interest in that because their job is to keep out the left. It's not to keep out the Republicans. Very clear by the, I was talking of peaceful transition of power, stressing it. Why? Because they want to really seem like, hey, yeah, we are all in with you. We're not your enemy. No, I am their enemy. Okay, so they will rig the primaries, even if not the general election, and it insists on a losing platform that the fascists will trample over. You're going to get that again in 2026. You're going to get it in 2028. You're going to get it in 2040 when the Democratic Party is running on Trump's 2016 platform, and the Republican Party is running on a platform of Hitler was a Jew-loving liberal cuck. Because that's coming with the way that we're headed. We're going to see parts of the right that we didn't think could exist. And it is fucking frightening. We won't engage in entryism as to enforce the people's will. We will create our own. So none of this DSA, we're going to take over the Democratic Party. It's dead. Leave its corpse alone. I'm going to throw up a video of, I already did throw up a video of me presenting the idea for how we're going to start this at some point tomorrow. Or we're going to start this. I threw it up tonight. I was going to do this video yet last night. So that's why I was throwing it up some point tomorrow. That's today. I threw it up this morning. Briefly, it's a party for parties, where we keep all our third parties intact, but the new party is an electoral vehicle where we fill in all the seats to run. And we all vote together as one for the same candidate. It has a minimalist economic platform to be as inclusive as possible, as far left as the squad, but it's more focused on getting the seats to have a constitutional convention and create such things as proportional representation and direct instant runoff voting for president. Once we have that, we break up. That party's gone. And we all run as we wanted to with an unbiased system. We actually have a multi-party system. And we can go for our more extreme stuff as we so choose and have our free discussions without worrying about the lesser evil. Never again are we sitting there trying to hold our nose for Kamala Harris, only to see her lose miserably to Donald Trump, both in the electoral and the popular vote, because she insists on being Trump light. Nobody wants Trump. They don't want Trump light either. They're not going to vote for you. Give that up. If you're in the squad or you're with the squad, leave the Democratic Party. Form your own party and engage in this project. If you are in a third party, spread the word inside and get your national committees working together to create this. If you're none of these, find a third party that speaks to you and join up. Get in there. Direct them towards this electoral vehicle. The entire working class movement, whether welfare liberals, social democrats, or actual socialists, need to get organizing already to make big ripples, because this takes 4 to 6 years at least, if we are still allowed to do it democratically at all. Thanks, Kamala, for possibly fucking that up for us. But remember that institutions are not part of the natural world. They are socially constructed. If the fascists start attacking the democratic functioning of our society, don't respect that institution. The Supreme Court lost all its legitimacy when it ruled that the rule of law is out the window and Donald Trump is immune from prosecution. The Constitution doesn't say the Supreme Court has the final word. A Supreme Court ruling named Marbury versus Madison did that. We don't have to recognize it. We can say, no, we the people are the final say. And we're not going to put up with that shit. We're not going to just bow down to fucking fascism. The fascist party, as long as they're working within this liberal oligarchic form that we've been working with for the past 250 years, will not cause trouble. But when they start trying to dismantle it and in an undemocratic fashion and start trying to murder people, start trying to take away rights from people, we're not going to put up with that shit. No. We don't have to respect it. As a society, if we all just started respecting it, the society would fall apart. It is a mutual agreement of ours that the U.S. government exists, that the U.S. government has power. That's something that we agreed on. That's not something that we have to continue agreeing on. It comes down to whether it is appropriate or not to stop agreeing on that. And in the case of fascists, trying to dismantle the semi-democratic functioning of society, dismantling the rule of law, it becomes appropriate to disregard that society. We will prosecute Donald Trump for crimes he commits in this term. Supreme Court be damned. If they start ruling crazy things, then we will disregard them. We will not submit to totalitarianism. This entire nation exists only with our assent. We hold the ultimate power as the people. And the biggest thing we can realize is that we hold the ultimate power, not a poorly sprayed tan dictator and a transphobe who is always sporting eyeliner and mascara. However, we have to stick together and act as the people. This is for your future, your children's future, your grandchildren's future. We will not submit to arbitrary power. Donald Trump and his Nazi power they can follow the rule of law, or they are the ones who invite lawlessness. This is just the beginning of this weekend. I've been quiet for a while, but I have 2 discussions lined up one lined up for later tonight. One of them I have to download and upload because apparently I messed up trying to stream the first one and didn't stream 2 anywhere. I haven't done this in a while. And hopefully a bit more to come after that. I may go quiet for a while because I am still supposed to be studying and writing papers, but I'm not gone for good. We're going to rise from the ashes together. Thank you for joining me, and remember to give this a like, give it a comment, give a subscription, If you hate me, go ahead, say you hate me in the comments. I'll take the algorithm boost. But that is what I want to cover right now. We're looking at later tonight. It's 4:15 p.m. here, 7 p.m. Minnesota time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern. I should be streaming with Stephanie Chelensky of the who was the vice presidential candidate for the Socialist Party USA this past election. So join me again then, and remember to take everything, think critically.